very long journey.
The ambitious proposal was announced at a press conference today attended by the city's leaders. It's the brainchild of Mr Derek Boozy, who is now employed by the Newcastle University. He imagines a scheme that will not only boost the university's image and leave behind a legacy of riches, but put Newcastle on the map once and for all. He's well qualified, having just arrived from Brisbane, where he was technical consultant for the Commonwealth Games. The World University Games, which was first conceived in 1923, attracts competitors from 100 countries, including Moscow and the United States. Mr Boozy will now lead a feasibility study into the proposal and present it to the Council in a month. Professor Cyril Rennick from the Hunter Valley Research Foundation described the idea as the best upmarket opportunity that has come our way in years. We would need to raise millions of dollars, accommodate thousands of people, build or adapt facilities for 10 different sports, all in 5 years. It may sound ludicrous, at the opening ceremony last Thursday, 6,000 children each formed part of the Australian flag, some holding coloured.
I believe this is just what the Newcastle and the Hunter region needs as a shot in the arm, because it will almost act like a giant vitamin pill. In other words, what it really needs is a goal, just like individuals need goals in life, so should cities, regions and nations. And I believe the goal of holding a World University Games would be just simply magnificent, because it'll bring the community together, it'll bring money into the area through grants and corporate funding and so on and so on. And I believe the legacy that'll be left behind will just be fantastic.
But there are some major hurdles for us.
What are the differences that we will, or basic differences to this car to anything else that we've seen? I believe it's quite a lot lighter for a start, isn't it?
Yes, it should be a lot lighter than the cars here. Actually, over there, they've just in the last year they've come down a lot. You know, they just keep getting lighter every few months. So it's hard to build a car though that's light and yet so you don't compromise safety. And this car's got real strong bars and stuff in it. But some of the parts that doesn't compromise safety are really light. But some of those things make expensive race cars too. But we have to do that. In America, where the way the prize money has went up, well, you have to do whatever necessary to win.
You get a dollar, of course.
Yeah.
Larry, I believe even such things as gears that aren't used in the gearbox are dispensed with. Things in the system that can be lightened in any way, in fact, are lightened.
Yeah, you use a lot of aluminum, and like you say about the gearbox, you spend lots of time and effort and money of getting rid of a few pounds, and that's kind of where a lot of it's at. It's not all weight though. There's a lot of other things that's probably really more important. To the weight is kind of the obvious thing, but there's a lot of other little tricks about this car.
Exactly that
we learned over the years.
2 weeks ago, it was announced that the company would be closing down the rolling mills at Newcastle. That closure would have involved only 1,400 workers. Now, 6,500 workers have been asked to take a week's annual leave or leave without pay, as well as the public holidays between December 25th and January 4th. Just one coke oven's battery and one blast furnace will remain in operation over the holiday period. The spokesman for the Newcastle Steelworks, Mr Ernie Bryan, said the number 2 blast furnace must be kept in operation because of its age and design. It will operate at a reduced level and most of the iron produced will be dumped. It's also tipped that 2 of the Steelworks' main customers, AWI's wire mills and tube makers, will also close down over the holiday period.
Represents 22 material for that have made a massive switch from oil to coal to industry leaders in Japan, Korea and Hong Kong, and there was a consistent message from them. Overseas users still want the Hunter's coal, but they also insist on that supply being reliable.
And we want a stable coal from Hunter Valley.
Today, a wide cross-section of Hunter Valley people telephoned their concern that the message of having constructed this impressive coal distribution centre, Ube Industries using the fact that Japanese companies prefer long-term business with Newcastle Council, Peter Barrack.
We recognise that if our economy is headed in the direction of resources extraction, then obviously we're catering for the overseas market. Obviously, the overseas market is one that demands a continuity of supply. But having said that, quite obviously there are other complexities that come into it. For example, that if you take the nature of the Australian Trade Union movement, who have traditionally fought for a standard of living based on movements in productivity and other questions, I think that will continue, and I think that perhaps that there ought to be a recognition of that overseas.
A very cheap sale and a wonderful opportunity for you to purchase today, and I've only bid $1,000. 1,000 I bid. I bid 1,000. $1,000. I bid $1,000 only. I bid $1,000, and believe it or not, she's on the market. I bid 1,000. I bid $1,000. 1,000. I'll take your hundreds. I bid 1,000. $1,000. I bid 1,000. $1,000, and out she goes at $1,000. I'll wait for you at 1,000. $1,000 she goes. Sold. $1,000.
She is Coranta. She has thrown us some of the best foals we've bred so far. Her last filly is almost jet black. She's a chocolate brown or black. She hasn't retained the foal.
Concrete began flowing at 5:30 this morning and just kept on coming until after lunch. The pour involved 280 cubic metres of concrete, and that kept 9 ready-mix trucks on a constant shut to feed 2 concrete pumping units. The floor that was poured today will form the main bar and auditorium of the $1 million rugby league club, which is scheduled to be opened by the end of February. The Woy Woy Club claims to be the most successful league club on the Central Coast, but until now it's never had a tournament home. In fact, members of the newly formed club will use their clubhouse next Sunday, holding a fundraising barbecue there even as the concrete dries.
The development of this site came under criticism from resident groups and was eventually knocked back by the council because it contravened building height regulations. The developers, Kern Constructions, lodged an appeal against the council's decision. Now they have opted out altogether because of the time involved. Dark's Iceworks will remain as is until another buyer is found. That may be difficult, according to the managing director of Dark's, Mr. Walter Woolley.
Now this has been a talking point in Newcastle among businessmen for some time, that development is being denied on this score to the people of Newcastle, and that spins out into all sorts of areas, and not the least important is the employment situation.
Deputy Lord Mayor Alderman Don Geddes agrees
No doubt
with
about
Mr.
that.
Woolley.
The development was a worthwhile development. It one that had the approbation and approval of all the citizens of Newcastle, except for a very vocal minority, and it's successfully destroyed that development and lost jobs to people in this area that are very important at the present time.
The protest meeting at Carrington, chaired by Newcastle Fishermen's Cooperative Manager Mr Brian Howe, was attended by about 50 local fishermen and MPs Mr Arthur Wade and Mr Richard Face. The fishermen claim the Newcastle estuaries are being fished out, and the problem is being compounded by the fact that anyone who pays the $100 fee is able to obtain a licence and compete for a share in the ever-diminishing fish supply. The locals say the influx of Vietnamese fishermen has made the situation worse. After the meeting, I asked Mr. Brian Howe what would be the next step in trying to overcome this problem of unrestricted entry.
At this point in time, we make representation to the Minister, Mr. Hallam, the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries, to try and put an embargo on the issuing of new licences.
But if there are no fish here, why are people coming?
Well, in the particular case of the Vietnamese, they're fishing 24 hours a day and trawling over the grounds time and time again and really depleting the fishing stock.
Three members of the state opposition, leader John Dowd, energy spokesman Mr Ted Pickering and the member for Pittman, Mr Max Smith, inspected the coal loader project and were clearly surprised by the progress that's been made. Project manager Mr Dennis Stone was able to show what the loader will look like when it's completed and to predict that that will be well before the target date of mid-1983. At this stage, the basic earthworks are almost complete, although parts of the low-lying island still have to be supercharged with sand, a technique that squeezes mud out of the underlying soil by the weight of piled up sand. However, even though the project is now going well, the opposition energy spokesman, Mr Ted Pickering, says in another sense it's still running late.
A Liberal Country Party government would not have allowed that 4-year delay to occur in the construction of this magnificent facility. You'll recall we waited 4 years while the Rand government had a brawl with the trade union movement as to who was going to run this coal loader. Now in that 4 years, because we didn't have the loader, unfortunately we lost valuable markets for our coal industry. And today we've got coal miners having to face a 4-day week because this sort of facility wasn't built in time.
The visiting Japanese are all from Kanagawa Prefecture, and the 17 representatives include directors and key executives of major companies that range from heavy engineering to cameras and even brewing. Their visit to Newcastle is part of a state tour aimed at strengthening economic ties. It's known that Kanagawa, an area centred around Yokohama, would like to develop a sister state relationship with New South Wales. After meeting Newcastle's Lord Mayor, the visitors were briefed by the Hunter Development Board and later met local businesmen. The group plans to take definite steps towards promoting New South Wales back in Japan.
First of all, we are planning to set up a permanent display corner in Kanagawa Prefecture to introduce New South Wales product into Kanagawa Prefecture. And secondly, we are thinking of holding a seminar so that more industry will know about New South Wales and more will come here to establish new business.
Through his interpreter, Mr Yagi went on to say that he hoped exchanges of technical trainees could also be established between the two centres at some time in the future. This is the business end of the $83 million pipeline that's now Newcastle's liquid fuel artery. At present, the line is carrying about 90% of Newcastle's fuel needs, but by March next year, the Shell refinery in Sydney will also be linked into the system, and even highly refined jet fuel will then be able to be pumped through the 229-kilometre line. To the layman, the concept of a mix of fuels using the same line is intriguing, but modern technology makes it possible to separate the products as they arrive in Newcastle. There's little waste. Even a small amount of slop, where say diesel and petrol are back-to-back, can be returned to Sydney for re-refining if necessary. The Newcastle end of the line can be controlled from Sydney by microwave link, but most of the local distribution to other oil companies is handled by local operators. A new distribution line is being built so that fuel can be pumped direct to the State Rail Authority depot at Tyers Hill. The whole system from Sydney to Newcastle is protected by an elaborate set of safeguards and checks. But even so, there's still a question. Could trouble with the pipeline now leave Newcastle completely starved of fuel?
If both refineries in Sydney were cut off, yes, but on balance I feel that the pipelines will be a lot more reliable than supply by maritime services have been in the past.
Will that facility to ship fuel into Newcastle remain?
It will remain as far as we can see into the future. For various reasons there will be a need to bring ships in from time to time. In fact, calling.
The townhouse development commands a high price as one of the city's most sought-after pieces of real estate. The view stretches out across the city and sea. 12 units, named after a former owner of Woodlands, Mr. William Bowmore, are situated off Tyrrell Street. There are 1, 2 and 3 bedroom units, priced between $74,000 and, like this one, $198,000. The building is the former west wing of the hospital, extended by Mr. Bowmore in 1965. Next to the units are 3 spacious townhouses off Church Street. They feature red cedar panelling, a large balcony overlooking the city and a loft leading from the 3rd floor. Price $249,000. Woodlands Hospital was to have been redeveloped, but the 110-year-old building, which was up until 2 years ago a private hospital, goes to auction on December the 18th. The 26-room, 85-square mansion has approval for 3 private and stately apartments.
The contract wasn't unexpected, but no one was sure that it would all depends on material and the price. The maintenance has already been but things have slowed down. The company is actually carrying some employees.
We've been able to redeploy some people into other fill-in work. People have been very cooperative in this manner. In that way we've been able to hold people here in anticipation that this order would come forward.
If the contract hadn't come, then you'd have been faced with retrenchments.
Certainly.
For how long will it now secure the conditions of the workforce here?
Our existing workforce, we're confident we can maintain it for 12 months, as the current contract we have will be phasing down. This new one will start. Admittedly, will carry on for some 3 3/4 years, but the balance of the workforce that we're being used on our production rate of 2 cars a week, with this reduction will be used on coal wagons, which will go on roughly for 12 months.
First carriage in the latest contract will be delivered in 12 months' time. Then they'll be built at the rate of 3 a month, dropping to 2 a month after 36 have been delivered. While most of the larger components come from outside the Newcastle area, the contract does have its spin-off for a number of smaller subcontractors. As well as the Gninnin's workforce, it's estimated about 90 outsiders will benefit from the continuing work.
Electrical Trades Union organiser Mr Tom Lyons says a 35-hour-a-week was scheduled to be introduced in January 1983 as part of an agreement reached last year. It was decided then that the shorter week would be phased in, starting with a 37-hour week this year. The Shortland County Council at its budget meeting last week indicated that it wanted to delay the introduction of a 35-hour week. The main issue at Monday's talks will be retrenchment of employees.
Well, when the council made that statement the other week, the union held a meeting with their delegates, and that's been opposed by the delegates, and the unions endorsed our opposition to any retrenchments in the electricity distribution industry.
The immediate concern is 6 apprentices.
Yes, they're due to finish their time next week, and we've made it clear that our opposition also includes the apprentices, that we're opposed to them being retrenched in the present economic climate.